of responsibilities, positions of authority in society, but as we seek such positions, we should be ready to carry out the responsibilities that go with them. And when we are disobedient to God, to parents, or to other authorities, we will be tempted to get into other sins. Once you start disobeying constituted authority over you, so you should obey them. Your parents are an authority over you. The husband is an authority in the home. The mother is an authority too in the home to the children. And of course, in the church, there's an authority. In society, there's an authority. Once you start disobeying authority, you are on your way to falling. So David refused to obey God and Israel. Then thirdly, laziness. He was lazy. He was supposed to be in battle. But verse 2 says, verse 2 says, and it came to pass in the eventide that David arose from off his bed. When are people supposed to go to bed? In the night. But here, just when it was evening, getting to the night, David was getting out of bed. So it means the whole day he was sleeping. He was lazy. He was lazy. He was sleeping all through, and he was lying in bed during the day. And David had been a very hard-working man. He had been a hard-working man in his father's household. He had been a hard-working man under King Saul. But here you find he has become lazy, maybe because he has gotten a position of authority. Many times, people are given positions of authority because of their performances. Then when they come into the office and to carry out those opportunities, they carry out the responsibilities of that office now, they become relaxed and then stop working. Promotion calls for more work. Promotion calls for more work. If you are promoted, it means you should work more. But oftentimes, promotion in society means less work. You just sit down there and expect that everybody will work. No. Promotion means more work. You are promoted because they have seen your performance here, so they want you to do more. That's why they elevated you. And if you do more there, you'll be taken up again. You do more, you'll be taken up. But in society, what happens is, the more the authority vested in you, the less you do. So if you have a position of authority, you should be prepared to work harder. Should prepare to be the most hard-working person in the organization. So once we become lazy, we'll not do the things that we are supposed to do, and then we'll be exposed to a lot of temptation. And then, so an important lesson for us to learn from this is that more temptation comes when we are not doing what we are supposed to be doing. More temptation will come when we are not doing what we are supposed to be doing. There's a popular saying that an idle mind is what? Is the devil's workshop. That's what they are saying. They are saying, when you are not doing what you are supposed to be doing, you'll be exposed more to temptation. And that's what happened to David. If he was in the battlefield, he would not have seen Bathsheba. He would not have been in bed. He would not have been at that balcony at that time. So when we are not doing what we are supposed to be doing, temptation will come our way. And when we are not faithful, for instance, we are not faithful to church, you are not where you are supposed to be, you are not in the company you are supposed to keep, you are not doing what you are supposed to be doing, temptation will come. So we'll find many more temptations coming our way when we are not where we are supposed to be, or we are in the wrong company. We'll be influenced too wrongly. So Christians commit sin many times because they are not in the right place doing the right thing, or in the right company. Those are the three things that cause us to sin: the company we keep, the places we go to, and then the things we do. Those are the things that contribute to all this temptation. So the cause of David's sin was pride, disobedience, and the laziness. Then next we talk about the cover up of the sin. So David had fallen into this sin, and then he tried to cover up. He tried to cover up. He did three things to try and cover up his sin. He called Bathsheba's husband Uriah from the battlefield. From verse 6. He said, and David sent to Joab, saying, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And when Uriah was come unto David, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And David said to Uriah, go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. So he invited Uriah's home, and then pretended as if he just wanted to know the state of the battle. Of course, Joab was reporting to him every time. Joab was telling him the progress of the battle. So when he brought Uriah's home, he pretended as if he wanted a report of the battle. He said, how is Uriah doing? How is the battle? How are the Israelites? How are the soldiers? How is it? And they said, okay, you can go home. The whole thing was a plot. He just wanted him to go home in order to cover his sin with Bathsheba. But Uriah did not go home. Verse 9. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down into his house, David said unto Uriah, comest thou not from thine journey? Why then didst thou not go down unto thine house? No king is going to be talking to a soldier like that. You see how he's so nice. Verse 10. And when they had verse 11, and Uriah said unto David, the ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As thou livest and as thy soul liveth, I will not do this thing. And David said to Uriah, tarry here today also, and tomorrow I will let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. So he's treating Uriah very nicely and pretending as if he cares for Uriah's family, that go home, and you just come back from a journey. You should go home to your family. At least for these few days you are off battle, go home to your family. That's how people pretend. When you see an enemy suddenly become so friendly, be careful. It's planning something. Be careful. My people say you eat with an enemy with a long spoon, so that you are standing far and then you are eating from the same plate. So if he wants to hold you, he will hold the spoon and then you run away. But if your spoon is short, he's going to hold your hand. So here you see the way he's treating Uriah, as if Uriah is a close friend, as if he values him. He does not value him for anything. All he values is himself. He wants to cover up his sin. So the next night, David made Uriah. So when he said all this, Uriah still slept in the palace, and the next day he did not go home. Then in verse 13, and when David had called him and did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk, and at evening he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah, and he wrote it in the letter, saying, set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. And it shall come to pass when Joab observed it. And it came to pass when Joab observed the city, that he assigned Uriah into a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also. So he decided to set Uriah down, and then he murdered him. He killed Uriah in order to cover his sin. You see that when we become careless and allow ourselves to fall into sin, there's no limit to what we can do. After one sin, there's no limit to what we can do. And then particularly when we try to cover the sin. When we try to cover sin, there's no limit to what we can do. We'll be shocked at what we can do. David did not intend to kill Uriah from the beginning. But as things became difficult, There's nothing he could do. So be careful. It's easier to start something than to stop it. It's easier to start to cover sin than it is to stop it. Because once you have started, there will be a lot of signs which, if not taken care of, people will begin to look at them. So the best thing is deal with it and let it go, and you will be free. So finally, Uriah died. But there's one thing we need to know about it. Note about Uriah. Uriah was more godly than David. Why was Uriah resisting going home? He did not know about this sin. He did not know. Why was he resisting? He was feeling that the Ark of Covenant was in the bush. All the other soldiers were in the bush. Israel was, the pride of Israel was at stake. He was a patriot. He was a patriot. He was a patron. You see, one of the problems we have in our own society is that we don't have patriots. We have people who claim to be patriots, elder statesmen, but they are not. They are not. Because a true elder statesman will put the state first. But we have people who put elections first. A true statesman puts election first. A politician just puts, a true statesman puts the state first. A politician just puts politics first. That's why the moment they finish elections and they are sworn in, you start hearing them talking about the next election. They are not talking about what they are going to do now that they have been elected. Are you not going around already seeing 2027 or on billboards? What have you done with what you have on hand? So here Uriah was more patriotic. He loved his nation. We should learn to love our nation. Yeah, we may have a nation that has been destroyed by evil, but we have no other nation other than this. So we should learn to love our nation and do the best we can at our own pace, at our own level. We may not be able to change things, but we can change our own little environment. We can change our own little environment. Finally, so David had Uriah died, and when Uriah was killed, David took Bathsheba to become his wife. Verse 16, or verse 17. And when the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David and Uriah the Hittite and died, and told David all the things concerning the war, and charged the messenger, saying, when thou hast made an end of telling the matters of the war unto the king, and if so be that the king's wrath arise, and he say unto thee, wherefore approached ye so nigh unto the city when he did fight? Knew ye not that they will shoot from the wall? Who smote Abimelech, the son of Jerubasheth? Did not a woman cast a piece of a millstone upon him from the wall, that he died in Tebes? Why went he nigh the wall? Then thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. So you see, once the leader is doing wrong and trying to cover wrongs, other followers will start doing wrong and using the leader's cover to cover their own. Joab knew that Uriah died because David wanted him to die. He knew. So when he sent him there, and then the war, he did not expect that they were going to kill so many soldiers of Israel. So he found that they killed so many soldiers in Israel. He sent information back to the king, and then he said, when you tell the king that we have we have actually suffered a lot of casualties in this battle, if the king becomes angry, just tell him Uriah is dead. The messenger did not know the impact of that message, but Joab and David knew. So the moment he went back there and then said and told the king said, oh, why did you go? Look, we have lost a lot of soldiers. Why? You would have known that when you go too close, the people are guiding, they are on top of the fence, they are going to shoot you from the fence. And now you've caused many people to die. He said, when the king becomes angry, just put this, the antidote. Say, Uriah is dead. And the moment that messenger said Uriah is dead, everything fizzled out. Because he saw that mission has been accomplished. Politics is a terrible game. So mission was accomplished. So the messenger went and came and showed David all that Joab had sent him. And the messenger said unto David, surely the men prevailed against us and came out unto us into the field, and were upon them unto the entering of the gate. And the shooters shot from off the wall upon thy servants, and some of the king's servants be dead, and thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. See how David will change. Verse 25. Then David said unto the messenger, thus shalt thou say unto Joab, let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoured one as well as another. Make thy battle more strong against the city, and overthrow it, and encourage thou him. And when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. And when the morning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife, and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. He has succeeded in covering his sin from man, but he said it displeased the Lord. In other words, it means God knew about that sin. Not so? You may succeed in hiding from man, but you definitely cannot hide from God. And that's because God knows all our secret sins. He knows all our secret sins. In Proverbs chapter 28, verse 13, Proverbs 28 and in verse 13, Proverbs 28 Proverbs 28 and in verse 13 reads, it says, he that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. So when you choose to cover your sin, you are doing a lot of harm to yourself. But when you confess the sin, judgment may come, but your heart will be set free, and you're going to have a lot of peace. So we must learn to confess our sins. And when we sin, the best thing to do is to confess it and then forsake it right away. And when we refuse to confess and forsake our sins, by and by, people will still know at the end. The book of Numbers chapter 32 and verse 23 says, be sure your sin will find you out. Your sin will find you out. So people will still know. Did people still know that David sinned with Bathsheba? No. Prophet Nathan came. So now that takes us to the consequences of that sin. Nathan the prophet came to David and gave him a story. Chapter 12 and in verse 1. So, and the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, there were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. And the rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds. David had 4 wives, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up, and he grew up together with him and with his children. He did eat of his own meat and drank of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man that had done this thing shall surely die. So he heard the story and immediately passed judgment. Nathan the prophet had told him, David pronounced his judgment upon the person, the alleged person who took somebody else's lamb. And he did not know. David's judgment was that the person is going to pay fourfold. To pay fourfold for that sin, and that he must die. Say the person will pay fourfold for that sin and then will die. We don't have time to read all those things. So David did not know that he was the person that Nathan was talking about. And because so finally, Nathan told him, you are the person. And that's when he started reasoning, okay, it should be that sin with Uriah. So he was just speaking figuratively, but when he explained that you are the person, he immediately knew what happened. And when he knew that what happened, David immediately admitted his sin. Immediately admitted his sin. In verse 7, chapter 12, verse 7, he said, and Nathan said to David, thou art the man, thus said the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wife unto thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus said the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this son. For thou did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the men, before the son. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also had put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. So because David admitted his sin, God reduced his punishment. The punishment was, you will die, and then you pay fourfold. God reduced his punishment. He said, you will not die. But David still paid fourfold. How did David pay? The fourfold way he paid was, you read the whole of that story, you get it. That baby, that Bathsheba gave birth to, died. Solomon was next to that baby. That baby died. That's the first way he paid. And then the second way he paid was, his own son, Amnon, attacked his daughter, Tamar, and they got into a terrible sin. Thirdly, his own son, Absalom, killed another of his son, Amnon, after that sin. Fourthly, his son Absalom rebelled against him and chased him away from the throne. So he paid. God said, be sure your sin will find you out. But if you confess, God may choose to forgive you and just let go. Or he may choose to reduce your punishment. In David's case, he reduced David's punishment. Some cases, he just decided to say, okay, go free. But it is all left to God. But when you refuse to confess, you are looking for trouble. There are 3 lessons you can learn from that. Number 1, we reap more than what we have sown. We reap by far more than what we have sown. You know, when farmers say, the harvest this year is so poor. If before you took your seeds to the farm, you weighed them, and then you have a very poor harvest that year, and everything you harvest, you weigh also, you will definitely know, as poor as the harvest is, you have harvested more than you sowed. Is that not so? No matter how bad the thing is. So that's the same thing in doing evil. You always reap what you sow. And then secondly, when we sin, we cause unbelievers to curse God. Look at chapter 12, verse 13. What Nathan said, verse 13, he said, and David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also had put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. Howbeit, because by this deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. So you see that when Christians choose not to live right, it brings shame to the name of God. It causes unbelievers to curse God. So we see, we will never become so important. We will never become so important that God will overlook our sin. That's the third lesson. We will never become so important that God will overlook our sin. David had done so much to serve God. But when he sinned, did God still judge him? Yes. You cannot become so important that God will overlook your sin. No. So he uses the same yardstick. In fact, the more you know, the longer the yardstick he uses in judging you. Say, those who know what they are supposed to do and fail to do it will be beaten with more stripes than those who don't know what to do and then don't do it. Then, the conquest after the sin. Because of this sin, Israel was losing in the battle. So after this sin was taken care of, after his sin, we find David back on the battlefield where he should have been. You can see that in chapter 12, verse 26 to 31. He went right back to battle. What did he do? He stopped being lazy. He stopped being disobedient. He stopped being proud. He went right back to battle. So that will teach us that the best cure for backsliding is to go right back to where you backslided. David went back to the things he had left off. Many times we backslide and we don't even know we have backslidden. If you were a Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night church attendee, but now you only attend Sunday morning, you have backslided. You have backslided. Don't say, no, I'm saying, no, you have backslided. And the only cure to that is go back to your first love. David immediately resumed what he used to do before. Go back to your first love. If you have been reading your Bible every day, but now you only read it when you have chance, you have backslided. If you have been praying every time, but now you only pray when you have chance, you have backslided. If you have been going soul winning, but now you don't go soul winning, you have backslided. And if you want things to come back to normal, you see that when David was in this condition, Israel was losing. Israel was losing. Israel was losing. But the moment he came back, there was a conquest. He started winning. Israel started winning the battles. So some of the problems we face at home are problems caused by our disobedience, by our neglect, by our pride, by our laziness, and by our unfaithfulness to God. So that's all the time we have for the sin, David's sin with Bathsheba. Next week, we'll talk about Elijah on Mount Carmel. Question time.